All right, belief number 4, you'll never really be heard. The fundamental formula for blowing up an artist for blowing up an artist's brand has been the same since we created art, since we were painting art on the cave walls, okay? Get a compelling artist with competitive art and put them in front of new eyeballs and let them do their thing. That's the formula. It's how it's always worked. Before we had radio, that's how it worked. After we had radio, that's how it worked. After we had MTV and CMT, that's how it worked. And now with streaming and with YouTube and all that, it's how it works, okay? Think about the genres that you love the most and who the icons in that genre are, right? Like, whatever your favorite genre is, like who are the icons, the definitive icons? Now think about the Me Too artists within that genre who kind of sound like the icons, right? Because the icons made money, then there's a bunch of Me Too products that come into the market, right? They come, Motley Crue started the hair band thing, really, and then all of a sudden, pow, like all these bands kind of looked and sounded like Motley Crue. Well, how did they come into existence? How did they get deals? How did they come into your awareness? Have you ever thought about that? They did that through, they had money, they had a label, they had radio, they toured, they had press. Motley Crue, Van Halen, Bon Jovi, Aerosmith, those are icons. And then all the other million sellers who still made a living and still make a living to this day, but they're not as memorable as those artists because those artists were like huge, right? In the old music business, you'd have to go into massive debt, right? The kind of debt that multi-platinum artists don't ever get out of with a label, to be granted permission to get in front of an audience, AKA to get on radio, so you could have a chance at making a living at your art. And which by and large, most artists who that made a living at their art, those 2,700 artists in the last 60 years, didn't even own their masters, didn't own their music, right? Which is a weird, effed up way to think about it, but it's true. In the new music business, as messed up as it is right now, because it's in disarray, but it's adjusting, it's adapting, okay? And understand that. And the more that you get on top of it, understand how to adapt, the more you're going to thrive and be ahead of everybody else who just wants to complain about the old music business, right? But as messed up as it is, the artist has way more leverage in the new music business because the power of reaching your audience with your music has been decentralized. Before, you had to get a label because you couldn't even afford to make the record, right? But Pro Tools decentralizes all that. Now we all have rigs in our house and we can all make records. And if we put our time and effort into learning how to do it, we can do pretty damn good jobs straight up from the living room. Billie Eilish, from the bedroom, they did that record, okay? But also the marketing power, the reach of social media is decentralized. Before, you had to get the deal with the record, to get the money with the label, to make the record because it cost a couple $100,000 to do it. And you couldn't afford to do that. And then they had to say yes, and you had to be allowed to be on the radio, right? You don't need anyone's permission to reach enough people to create a movement, okay? Artists own the traffic now, not the labels. That used to not be the case. You wanted traffic, you're going to have to get on the radio. You don't get on the radio unless this guy says yes. One guy. Artists own the traffic, not the labels, and also not the streaming platforms. Whoever owns the traffic rules the road. Nobody goes to Spotify for Spotify. Nobody goes to Spotify for Universal or Warner Music or Sony. They go to Spotify for Taylor Swift, for Jay-Z, for Van Halen, for Celine Dion, for U2, for Dolly Parton, for George Strait, for Grandmaster Flash, for Celine Dion, for King Diamond, for Judas Priest, for Tim McGraw, for their favorite artists, okay? And the traffic will follow the artist on a digital platform. Distribution doesn't matter in the new music business, okay? I could prove this with the Jay-Z story. A couple years ago, he released 444, which was the first album Jay-Z had released in like 9 years, I think. So God bless Jay-Z. He had massive demand for that record. He also was the principal owner in a streaming service called Tidal, which in order for him to try to, knowing the demand that he had, in order for him to try to increase subscribership at Tidal, he released exclusively on Tidal for the first week that record came out. None of the other streaming services could get it, and then he released to the other streaming services. Did Jay-Z increase subscribership at Tidal? Oh, I'm certain that happened. But the bigger story was the 1 million pirated downloads that week of that record. So these were not 1 million kids who just got through hacking the Pentagon or NASA. No, these were 1 million straight up fans that couldn't wait to hear the new Jay-Z record. And so it wasn't even a matter of where it was distributed. In this case, that record wasn't distributed unless you were on Tidal. And they found it. Okay? So focus on the demand. Don't worry about the distribution. As blockchain continues to penetrate the masses, traffic will become more important than ever. Artists and songwriters are going to be paid much more for their traffic. You already know, like, YouTubers, right? There's YouTubers out there make comfortable big 6 and 7 figure livings creating on YouTube. And there's TikTok stars and Instagram stars, and they figured out how to do this. Well, these are real. This is real cash flow. Why? Because they own traffic. Rest assured that you as an artist and as a songwriter are going to be paid much more for your traffic, because on blockchain, there's no middleman, and it's coming. This isn't a pipe dream. This year is the year it's sort of slated to disrupt Spotify already. Okay, so it's here. Snoop Dogg just bought Death Row Records and proclaimed it's going to be an NFT only label, which is blockchain. And shortly after Snoop Dogg completed the purchase of Death Row Records, Dog Style, his debut release, and Chronic, which was the big release from Dr. J, are off the market. You can't find them streaming now because they're going to release them, I believe, solely as NFTs. You can only get them on blockchain. Why? Because they're going to get paid. And so there's no middleman now. And so all the money from the traffic goes to the artist. So it's a much bigger piece of the pie. Like 95% bigger than what the breadcrumbs you're getting now. Okay? And artists and songwriters are also paid instantly for the traffic that they create. There's no PROs like ASCAP and BMI holding everything up and taking 9 months to pay you for all the commerce that you created. It happens instantaneously. So that's huge, because quicker cash flow means you can afford to grow faster as a business. So these are things I want you to understand when you're trying to be heard. This is out there. It's available now.